Nate Loper is a pastor here of the Student Ministries in Calvary Assembly of God, and he's the founder and director of Genesis Creation Science Institute at genesisscience.org. He's been very fortunate to speak at many venues, at churches and schools. He's hardcore at junior highs and high schools because he's got a heart to reach the youth, and I notice there's a lot of cool youth here tonight. I'm really happy about that. He has studied on flood geology, Noah's Ark. He's led various tours and things like that to the Grand Canyon, Sequoia, and national parks. And he's really good at speaking to youth as well as anybody. And let's welcome Nate Loper tonight.
Let me get this real quick. Can't do anything without your notes, right? All right. Hey, Phyllis, thank you so much for telling everyone about the table that I have back there. And I want to kind of show you what we've got. A couple things back there. The stuff that's back there for sale, we'll take cash, check, credit card, firstborn, whatever you want to give. Keep it firstborn, I've got one. But we can take that all. What that money does go to the ministry directly. And it helps to get creation science materials to schools, to colleges, to churches, whatever it is to get it out there to the world. One of the things that we have back there are these nice handy bags. And on the front it says this: what does this bag and evolution have in common? They're both made of recycled garbage. Some, ouch. A little on the head. Who wants this bag? I got it free right now. All right. Right back there. Oh, watch it. All right, and then back there also, there's a t-shirt. I think the bags are $5. T-shirts are only $10. There's CDs, there's DVDs, there's books. There's all kinds of resources for you or for family members and friends. The other thing we have back there are t-shirts. We've got them in all sizes, of course. And it says this: scientific evidence for evolution listed on back. All right? You guys ready for this? Scientific evidence for evolution listed on back. You know what's really good about this t-shirt is it saves me printing costs. Yeah. I have to do one side. Who wants a free t-shirt? I got size small. Who's the size small? Right there. There you go. All right. Well, tonight I'm going to talk about a passion of mine, and that's dinosaurs. Who's seen Jurassic Park? We've all seen the movies Jurassic Park. Well, who's ever heard of Jurassic Ark? We're going to talk about Jurassic Ark tonight. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have fun. I like teaching and working with students. You know why? Because they like to have a lot of fun. I like teaching you guys here tonight. You know why? Because you like to have a lot of fun. So we're going to have a lot of fun tonight talking about dinosaurs, some great discoveries in science that have recently come up that actually give support to the Bible's descriptions of Noah's Ark and the flood and what really happened to these dinosaurs. We're going to look at some scientific discoveries recently that really back that up. So Jurassic Ark, dinosaur discoveries that back up the Bible. Now, if you look in textbooks, if you talk to people that don't believe the Bible at all, many times they will say this: there is no evidence in the geological record that the flood of Noah ever took place. We can't find it anywhere. It's not there. Well, what should you do at that point? Here's what you probably should do. You should, well, besides laugh. Who said laugh? No, don't laugh. Don't laugh at them because they don't have an understanding. But here's what you should do. You should say, ask them a question. What evidence are you looking for? Well, let's see. If there really was a flood, then we would expect for there to be all these millions of animals that have died in this flood, right? We'd expect them to be buried. We'd expect to find them, right? And you say, yes, that's true. Well, we'd expect to see, worldwide covering of sediments, right? Sedimentary action. We'd expect there to be tectonic activity, and you'd say, yes. We'd expect there to be this remnant, this massive graveyard around the world full of dead animals and things, right? And you say, yes. And then you might say, well, what is it you're looking for? Because that actually is what we're looking for. And that actually is what we find. And in the words of Ken Ham, you guys know this, What would you expect if there really was a global flood? Well, you would expect to find billions of dead things buried in rock layers, laid down by water, all over the earth. You'd expect to find it. What do we find? We go out, we dig in the earth, we find billions of dead things buried in rock layers, laid down by water, all over the earth. So then you say to this person, next question? No. The problem is people don't have a biblical understanding, a biblical world view when it comes to evolution, when it comes to dinosaurs, when it comes to creation, when it comes to Noah's Ark. I've heard so many people come and tell me, well, Noah's Ark never could have been built. It never could have happened because this and this and this and this. And they're quoting things that aren't from the Bible. They're quoting things and they're saying, well, the Bible says this. And I say, well, I've got one right here. Let's look and see what it says. And they're realizing, wait a minute, a lot of what's being said and quoted and taught is not actually what the Bible says. So we're going to look at what the Bible actually says. We're going to go there. But tonight we're also going to look at some scientific evidence that really backs up what the Bible teaches. You see, the evidence is all around you. You just have to be able to look at it with the understanding of what the Bible teaches and look at it through biblical glasses. And so we're going to do that a little bit tonight. Now there's one thing, we're going to talk about three different things. Okay, so if you got notes, if you're taking notes, three main topics we're going to hit tonight. All around the world, we see these massive graveyards of fossils. I mean, fossils are basically that. It's a massive graveyard around the world of things that have died and been buried in sediment, which sediment's laid down by water. So they've been buried in sediment and water, and then they fossilized all around the world. Now, one of those really interesting things, some of the interesting things we see are these what we call mass kill sites, where we go around and we can find just huge jumbles of bones all mixed together, all stacked together, stacked on top of one another, mismatched, all sorts of different ways. These mass kill sites, or these mass graveyards that, looking at the evidence, it tells you, obviously, there was a catastrophe that happened here. It wasn't simply that, well, one dinosaur, was walking along the river and they died, and then another one, a few million years later came over and he died. I mean, this is a massive catastrophe. These are bones and fossils jumbled all up together. And when I look at that, I say, wait a minute, we're looking for a massive catastrophe. Let's see, what does the Bible say? There was a massive catastrophe. The flood of Noah wiped out nearly all life on the planet except for that which was on the ark. Massive catastrophe, we're looking at it. So one of the first things of Dinosaur Discoveries, the back of the Bible, I would say is mass kill sites. Now, one of those can be found here back in Colorado. Yay, Colorado. That's where I'm from. Colorado, a place is called Dinosaur National Monument, and it actually extends from Colorado into Utah right here. But there's Dinosaur, Colorado. You can go up the road to Dinosaur National Monument. And this is a world-renowned site for dinosaur fossils. They're all over the place up here. In particular, they have a park that's set up right here. And in this park, you can see that there is this wall that they have contained within this building. And this wall is covered with fossils all over it. Many, many, many fossils. In fact, the face of this wall alone contains over 1,600 fossilized dinosaur bones. 1,600 alone. And this is just one segment. Now imagine if you went back another 2 or 3 feet into the wall. Another 2 or 3 feet. All the bones that are in. So they've been able to take out lots of these fossils. They've sent them to museums around the world. In fact, many of our museums contain fossils from this location right here. That's amazing. And what they see when they look here is actually just a jumbling of bones together. They're not articulated, they're not necessarily all together. Some are somewhat close, but there are components of different dinosaurs all strewn about. It's an obvious catastrophe that's taken place. Obviously, something big, something drastic, something dramatic took place to cause all of these dinosaurs to be washed together. And that's what had to happen because they're laid down in sedimentary rock. They've been washed together in this mass kill site. Now we find this all over the world. We find many of these mass kill sites where it's like we hit the jackpot of dinosaur bones. You walk around the world, certain places you find these mass kill sites, and for paleontologists, they find one of these and man, they're famous. They're set because this can take years and years and years of studying and puzzling out what dinosaur bone is this and what does this go to and how do you put these together? And then they find pieces of dinosaurs that they didn't have in museums, and so now they're able to have a more complete dinosaur. Amazing, amazing sites like this. But they're all over the world, these mass kill sites. and it's great evidence, great to study. Now, I told you I love dinosaurs, but there's someone else in my family who loves them probably just as much. Anybody know who that is? My son, Caden. He loves dinosaurs. I love taking him to our Natural History Museum here in LA, and he calls it the Dinosaur Museum. Caden, you want to go to the Dinosaur Museum? Yeah. So his eyes light up, and this is him. One of the last times we went over there to the Dinosaur Museum. He loves the Natural History Museum. He loves these dinosaurs. And he just now turned 3, but every single one of these dinosaurs up here, he knows by name. He'll tell you all the other names, the ones that you probably haven't even heard of. And I love that about him. He's like, yeah, that's my boy. That's my boy. He loves dinosaurs. I love taking him to this museum. And if you haven't been to the LA Natural History Museum recently, since last July, you need to get over there because they have an entire new wing just for dinosaurs. Has anybody been over there since they opened it up again with the dinosaurs? All right. A great spot. They've done a great job. They have a whole new section just for dinosaurs over there. And so as soon as it opened, I was over there, looking at it, reading all the signs and the things that they have over there. And there's a spot that really caught my eye. So I went and I took a look, and there's a spot where it's under the glass now. It's a pretty big feature. And in there they have one of these kind of mass kill sites of multiple different dinosaurs that are all together, washed together, jumbled together, lots of different pieces. And really neat to look at, really neat to say, hey, this evidence for the flood right here. But you know what was even better that day than looking at this evidence right in front of me? What really caught my eye was what the sign said that they had just now put right there for this display. Now this isn't a creation museum. This is our museum right up the road there, Natural History Museum. This is what it says about this display. These dinosaurs drowned in an ancient catastrophe. Oh, okay. These coelophysis skeletons are just a few of the hundreds found in a single quarry in New Mexico. How could so many animals, both young and old, have died and been buried together? By studying the jumbled bones and the rocks in which they're preserved, scientists have concluded that they were swept away, drowned, and buried in a flood. I didn't print that. That's not at Kinham's Museum over there in Kentucky. This is our LA Natural History Museum right up the road. Scientists have concluded they were swept away, buried, drowned in a flood. Wow, and I say, yeah, I know. I've been saying that for years, right? Yeah, these dinosaurs, they're showing this, that they died in a catastrophe, in a flood. And obviously, what flood do we know that occurred that was a huge catastrophe? Worldwide flood of Noah. Swept animals, swept people, swept debris, swept plants, swept everything. Swept it together. Buried, drowned, died. Now we're digging them up, we're finding them. And so this, to me, is one of those great scientific evidences of the flood. And whether or not they even realize what they're saying here, I looked at it and said, hey, that's great. That's why I took this picture, because I said this is going to be a great part for my talk. Because look at this. Right here, right down the road, scientific evidence that supports the biblical narrative of the flood. I get excited about things like this. And so going around looking at the different signs, there's lots of things, lots of pieces you can put together. So the first thing, if you're taking notes, mass kill sites. They're great scientific evidence. Scientists are looking at this and they're realizing it had to have happened in a catastrophe, buried in a flood, buried very rapidly so that they can fossilize. Great evidence that backs up the Bible. Second one I want to get to tonight is this. Dinosaur evidence, Dinosaur Discoveries that back up the Bible. Unfossilized bones. Now, some of you may have heard of this, but in case you haven't, let me kind of tell you just briefly about this. Back in 1993, Dr. Mary Schweitzer, she's a paleontologist working up in the Badlands areas up there where they find dinosaurs all over the place. She's up there, and they discover a T-Rex, and so they get it, they plaster it, they get it all covered, ready to move. But it turns out that one of the bones, they have to break apart to transport. Sometimes they get too big for the helicopters to lift them, so they have to either cut them or break them into smaller pieces. Then when they get back to the lab, they'll reassemble them, put some glue in there, and good to go. Now, this bone was too large, so they had to break it open. And there you go. They had to break open this leg bone of a T-Rex. And when they broke open this leg bone, guess what they were surprised to see? They looked in there, and there was something that they've never seen before inside of these bones. It was very strange, very interesting. She took it back to the lab. She took parts of it, and she dissolved certain parts in acid to remove away the bone and the fossils. And guess what was left behind? Organic components inside there. Basically, soft tissue remnants left behind inside this bone. Now, here's a picture of some of these. This goes against evolutionary teaching, because these bones should have been at least 65 million years old, and there's no way that soft tissue could have survived for 65 million years without becoming fully fossilized. So this puzzled many scientists. In fact, she went around the nation sharing her things, and she said, I don't know how it happened, I don't know the mechanisms, I'm not teaching anything other than 65 million years and evolution. I'm just saying this is what we found. We opened this bone up, and this is what was inside, and I don't have an explanation for it. Well, many evolutionists saw this right away and said, whoa, 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 these creationists are going to jump on this because they're teaching that the earth is 6,000 years old. Well, they started, saying things against her, accusing her of things, trying to find out some other explanation that there's no way that this could possibly be soft tissue. You must have messed up in the lab. You must have been trying to lie to us. This must be something else that was left inside the bones that wasn't tissue. But she couldn't deny it, because she looked, and when she did research, she found that these things were stringy and kind of stretchy. These components, when they were rehydrated, they had very similar shapes to blood vessels and arteries and different components. In fact, some of these things look like tubules, like arteries and veins, and inside them, structures that look very much like red blood cells. Wow, how do you explain red blood cells like that inside this? She said, I don't know how this came to be that it's not fossilized, but here it is. And so they looked at this, and then they began to do some tests and run some things, and they actually found out inside this T-Rex, they found proteins that they were able to identify, at least 4 different proteins, including laminin, which is that cell adhesion protein that keeps things together. We all have it. You got laminin. Dinosaurs had laminin. They found it inside this T-Rex bone. Looking inside, they found these proteins within this T-Rex bone. And it's a puzzle. It's astonishing, because this should not be. This should not happen. There should not be red blood cells. There should not be soft tissue. There should not be any remnants. It should have been completely mineralized and replaced by minerals as everything fossilizes, as it usually does. But inside this large T-Rex bone, she found soft tissue remains. Surprising, astonishing. So she began to say, well, maybe we can find it in other animals. So she went out and they began to look, and guess what? Inside the bone of a hadrosaur, leg bone of a hadrosaur, now this is the bigger bones, inside in the core of this hadrosaur, they also found, guess what? Soft tissue. I've got a hadrosaur bone right here. This is you guys look like trustworthy people, right? Well, not Garth, but this is a bone of a hadrosaur, actual thing. I'm going to pass this around if you guys want to take a look, because show and tell is fun no matter how old you are. Hadrosaur bone. Inside this hadrosaur, Mary Schweitzer and her team found the same things. Unfossilized soft tissues. And they began to look around the world, and they're finding more and more unfossilized tissues, despite the thought that this should not happen. In fact, Buddy Davis, he's a paleontologist, I've heard that they went up to the north slopes of Alaska, pretty much as far north up there as you can go. And up there, they say that there are unfossilized dinosaur bones up there as well that they're pulling out of the mountainside. Amazing, amazing discoveries that really shouldn't take place at all. Should not happen with millions of years. But not really a problem for recent, creation, recent flood. And there's easily, that these things could have been completely unfossilized within maybe 4,300 years versus 65 to 70 million years. More plausible that way. Looking at that, I say, yeah, it kind of helps back up the Bible that if these things cannot remain unfossilized for 65 million years, something's off. Maybe it's your years. Now, another thing, when they're up there looking at the Badlands, and down here in Hell's Creek, Montana, is where they dig up fossils all over the place. This is where she found that T-Rex bone. In Hell's Creek, she noticed something. whenever they would break open some of these bones, they would get this really putrid smell, almost like rotting flesh, almost like a cadaver, she said. So she talked to her friend, Dr. Horner, and went to him and said, well, what in the world is this smell? And Jack Horner said, well, yeah, all bones up there in Hell Springs smell like that. They all smell like rotting flesh. When you break them open on the inside, they have that smell of decaying remnants, decaying remains. Interesting. After 65 million years, they still smell like dead animals, when there should be no organic components at all. It should have completely been fossilized. I mean, it's like breaking open a rock and saying, hey, this rock smells like a dead animal. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And it shouldn't make sense if there's 65 million years since they were here on the earth, but it makes a lot of sense when you look at what the Bible teaches. God created everything, including dinosaurs, within 6 days. And then looking at genealogies, you can add up these ages and come to the conclusion that the earth is roughly around 6,000 years old. The flood occurring 4,000 to 4,300 years ago. Now, it's a lot easier to see how something could have possibly not completely decayed away or been fossilized. We know for a fact that it doesn't take millions of years for fossils to form. There are great cases of fossils happening very rapidly. I mean, in a few years, not millions of years, all you have to have are the right conditions for fossils. Fossils have nothing to do with time. They have more to do with the conditions present that form them. The conditions you need are water, you need minerals, and you need a lot of this putting together. And the same sort of things you would see during the flood of Noah, as these animals are buried in the flood of Noah, in the sediments, and all the things happening, and fossilization taking place could happen fairly rapidly. It doesn't take millions of years. However, over millions of years, you should not have any soft tissues inside these dinosaur bones. So the second thing, if you're taking notes, write this down. Unfossilized soft tissues. Very, very interesting. This is very controversial. This is something they're still studying. They're still piecing together something that scientists are puzzled as to why this can happen. And a lot of them are finally coming to the end of the rope and saying, well, maybe we just don't know how fossilization happens. Maybe they can stay locked away for 65 million years without fossilizing. That's what they're coming to. Well, they can't deny it, so they must say, well, I guess it can happen. Well, it doesn't really happen the way that they're trying to grasp straws at. But if you look at it from the Bible's perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Now, the third thing I want to talk about tonight, Garth kind of alluded to it before. Some of these dinosaur discoveries, the backup of the Bible, and this is the main part of this talk. This is what I've been wanting to share for a while, and you guys are privileged to be one of the first audiences to hear this. Pretty exciting stuff. Dinosaur discoveries, the backup of the Bible, are a reduction in dinosaur kinds, a reduction in dinosaur species around the world. Now, let me share a little bit with you. One of the reasons why dinosaurs are so popular in museums and places is that they are kind of the poster child for evolution, if you will. Dinosaurs, we don't see them roaming around on the earth. We don't have them, walking down the street. And so they say, well, they must have all died out millions of years ago. And they'll talk about dinosaurs, and they'll use them as a great way to bring in people and bring great teaching. I recently went over to Biola University, and they had a big youth rally there. And so I set up a little table out there, give away some free stuff, give away some resources and books, make them available to students. And guess what I put on the table with me? Dinosaurs, of course. And you know what? You don't care what age they are. They're junior high kids all the way up through professors that are walking by and they see dinosaurs, and guess what they do? Ooh, dinosaurs. And they walk right over there because they see dinosaurs. And they look at the dinosaurs and say, oh, I love dinosaurs, or my kid loves dinosaurs, or my grandson loves dinosaurs. And then they begin to look at the rest of the stuff that I have, about creation and what the Bible teaches. And so it's a drawing mechanism. It's easy to draw a crowd. You just throw some dinosaurs and people are there. Dinosaurs are pretty much universally loved by everyone. They're exciting. I love dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are fun. And evolutionists, they know the same thing. If we can put dinosaurs in our museum, people will flood our museums. They're going to be there to learn and to see these dinosaurs. So dinosaurs are used as a kind of poster child for evolution. And when you go to the museums, you'll see charts of evolution with these dinosaurs. You'll see these different branches and things that they teach, as far as these dinosaurs coming from one, primeval reptile that kind of branched off this way, and then these guys went this way, and these guys all died out, but this way they kept going. And they have all these teachings and thoughts of dinosaurs. And so what they'll do is they'll teach, one type of dinosaur evolved into another, evolved into another, evolved into another. And during the lines, you'll see that they progressed, and slowly, as evolution ran its course, different dinosaurs were born, came about. Now you can see on here, this is the Hadrosaur family, same thing you guys are touching, all right? This is from the Hadrosaur family, and so it shows kind of the line of Hadrosaurs as they were coming about. Maybe they started off kind of these smaller guys, and eventually grew bigger and better, and natural selection helped them along, and all these mutations. And so they're teaching that dinosaurs evolved over millions of years to higher and higher forms until eventually they were wiped out, 65 million years ago by a giant meteorite in the Yucatan Peninsula. So they're teaching all of these things. They're lining it up. They're drawing in huge crowds of people. And it is a drawing tool. It's great. That's why I have a membership to our Natural History Museum, because I go to see the dinosaurs. They've got, dioramas of other animals and things, and that's great, but I'm there to see the dinosaurs. It's exciting. But they use these as a mechanism to teach evolution. And they teach evolution very subtly through these charts and these things. And they say, well, this dinosaur came from this family line, which evolved for millions of years. And it's kind of sad, because you can walk into the museums and you can see students and parents and people teaching about this evolution. Oh, they lived millions of years ago. And the posters, the charts and the things that they have there teach millions of years and evolution and things that are very unbiblical and sometimes even anti-biblical, depending on which museum you're at. Very tricky. Now, one of my favorite places in the whole world is this right here. Does anybody know where this is? London. I'll give you a hint. If you look at the cars, they're driving on the left side of the road. Yeah. All right. This is London. This is London, England. One of my favorite places here. And here we'll kind of look at another. I love this. To me, this is the most beautiful building in all of London that I've seen. My wife is from London, so we get to travel back and forth, and it's an amazing privilege. But this is one of the most beautiful buildings. In fact, in my opinion, it's better than Westminster Abbey as far as architecture. It's beautiful. Here's the main entrance to this. Incredible. You can look at these pillars and just all of this craftsmanship and workmanship. It's amazing. Now, this is a house of worship in London, okay? Anybody know where this is? Okay, we heard a few things. Great house of worship. You walk inside here. This is from the third level. I took this picture last time we were there. Looking down, the main entrance is underneath the stairs here, but it goes out here. But I call this a house of worship because if you see in the very middle, when you walk in the museum, you walk straight on, and there's a big dinosaur right in the middle there. But then right behind him, sitting on this proverbial throne, beautiful statue of marble, is this guy right here. Do you see him? All right. One guess as to who that is. Darwin. There we go. Charles Darwin. You walk in here, and I call it a house of worship. It's really the Natural History Museum in London. But when you walk in here, this whole museum is dedicated and devoted to one person. And especially over in England, he's almost revered as godlike, and it's Charles Darwin. He is the hero of science. He's revered. They have a whole section just to Darwin and his life and his upbringing and his philosophies and his theories. This whole thing is devoted to Darwin. You walk in and he's sitting up here and he's watching you as you walk into the museum. It's almost like if you go back to Greek times and you imagine these big temples, a big statue of Zeus kind of standing up there. You walk in his temple and there's Zeus, either standing or sitting on his throne. Same sort of feeling you get if you ever go here. You walk in and there's a big statue, bigger than life statue of Charles Darwin, white marble, sitting on his throne, watching everything you do. And everywhere you go in this museum, it's all about Charles Darwin. It's all about evolution. Now, like any good museum around the world, they have dinosaurs, of course. And in this museum, they actually have the skull of my personal favorite dinosaur right here. Anybody know what that one is? All right. Good guesses, good guesses. I hear Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus. This is my favorite dinosaur, partially because the name is so hard, but also you'll see. This is the The Pachycephalosaurus, all right? This is the Pachycephalosaurus, and in Latin, it basically means the thick-headed dinosaur. So, Pachycephalosaurus. Pachycephalosaurus, a thick-headed dinosaur. How would you like to go around life being called thick-headed? Well, some of you might be, but thick-headed dinosaur, they thought maybe that they would use their heads, to butt together like rams would and things like that, and there's debate and controversy on whether they actually did that or not. But the Pachycephalosaurus is it's my favorite of all the dinosaurs. It's just a neat dinosaur. It's got that big dome on there, and it's really a fun and hard word to say. But they have this at the Natural History Museum. They have the skull of the Pachycephalosaurus. And I love it. It's great. It's fantastic. Now, about 2 years ago, how many of you, let me ask you, how many of you guys here like watching really boring programs on TV called documentaries and science programs and history programs? Let's see. All right. How many of your husbands or wives think your programs are boring? All right. Yeah. How many of you love them? Yeah. I love watching, National Geographic and the Science Channel and the History Channel. I love just learning lots of stuff. About 2 years ago on National Geographic, they had this program on there called Dinosaurs Decoded. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but I sat down and I watched this, and as I did, I had my computer out, and I was watching, so I'm just taking notes all of a sudden. It was just like an amazing program called Dinosaurs Decoded, and it was done mostly by a well-known paleontologist named Jack Horner. He's one that was up there. He works in the Badlands. He works at Hell's Creek. He I think he himself has located and dug up more T-Rex fossils than any other person on this planet. Amazing amount of T-Rex bones and fossils, and they're pretty rare. Now, Jack Horner was talking in here. Now, he's not a creationist. From all indications, he's probably not a Christian. He is a very staunch evolutionist. He's one of the major proponents for feathered dinosaurs, and that dinosaurs, eventually turned into birds. And he's even talking about reverse retroengineering, a chicken embryo to become a dinosaur by activating dormant genes. But very strong evolutionist. So this program is by no means a Christian or creationist program, but in here they're sharing some things that really caught my eye. First of all, they're talking about my favorite dinosaur, Pachycephalosaurus. And so I said, hey, I'm going to watch this because that's my favorite dinosaur. So Jack Horner, great guy. I mean, he's amazing in his field, amazing for what he does. In fact, if you've ever seen Jurassic Park, you remember the paleontologist guy? What's his name that they bring in? Dr. Guy, I can't remember his name now. But that character is based on Jack Horner himself. And in there, remember, he talks about feathered dinosaurs, and the kid laughs at him, and he talks about, the velociraptor, and this little kid laughs at him until he says, well, this thing could cut your stomach open and spill your guts. And then the kid says, ooh, not funny anymore. But that character, Dr. Alex Grant, that was his name. Dr. Grant, his character was based on Jack Horner. Jack Horner was on set advising them and sharing a lot of stuff. So it's a great program. He's got a lot of information. However, how many of you know information is not always the truth? You can share information. I can tell you that the sky is pink. That's information. Is it true information? No. He's sharing a lot of information, and some of it is it's just way out there. Let me just say that. If you watch it, a lot of it, don't buy it. But there is something that he does share about that really grabbed hold of me and said, wow, this is great evidence, great dinosaur discoveries that back up the Bible. And this is what I want to share with you tonight. In that program, he talks about these 3 different species of dinosaurs. Now, one of them, at the very bottom, is that Pachycephalosaurus, my favorite one right there. Then up here, we have another one, a little bit smaller, a little bit different shaped dome head. That one is called Stygimoloch, and he's right here. And this other little one right here is called the Dracorex hogwartsia. Sounds like Harry Potter. Guess when they discovered this dinosaur? Right kind of at the height of the Harry Potter movement. So they actually called it the Dracorex hogwartsia, which translates to being the Dragon King of Hogwarts. So, the Dragon King of Hogwarts. They discovered this other species right here, and they said these are 3 different species, and they are, basically probably an evolutionary line, and they go from different evolutionary features. So you have right here, you have Pachycephalosaurus, Stygimoloch, and Dracorex hogwartsia. And the thought was that there are different dinosaur species, which is why they have different dinosaur names. Now, we have lots of dinosaurs that look similar, that share similar features, but have very different names because, A, if you discover the dinosaur, guess who gets to name it? You do. You discover the dinosaur, you get to name it, and so you get that privilege. Now, if you're out in the field and you discover a slightly different dinosaur, are you going to say, oh no, that's homeboy's dinosaur over there, that's somebody else's dinosaur? Or are you going to say, oh, this is a brand new dinosaur, I get to name it? Well, you're going to say, this is a brand new dinosaur and I get to name it, and you get the credit and you get the glory, even if it turns out to be the same dinosaur. That's happened in the past where we found dinosaurs and turned out they're actually the same species. Now, this has been told and taught and shared that these are different species that evolved differently over different periods of time. But Jack Horner, he said, wait a minute, let's look at this. So what they did is they actually had the skull of the Pachycephalosaurus. They began to take a look at these, the bumps in particular that they have along the back here. So we began to look at this Pachycephalosaurus skull, and then he started to compare it to the Stygimoloch and the Dracorex. Now they have a little bit different features, you can see. Dracorex has these more, sharp, pointy kind of horns out of the back, and they kind of get smaller. And if you see here, in this skull, the Pachycephalosaurus, it's really only kind of some bumps that are back there. But if you look at them and comparing them, they're in the same exact positions, they share the same features. So they begin to say, wait a minute, what if what we're looking at is not actually different dinosaurs, different species? What if what we're looking at are the same species at different stages of life, different developmental stages, okay? Or maybe it's even different sexes, difference between males and females. So we begin to look at this and realize, wait a minute, typically Dracorex is smaller than Stygimoloch. Stygimoloch is typically smaller than Pachycephalosaurus. So looking at the fossils, they're actually smaller, and they progress to small to large. So I said, wait a minute, what if this is actually one species of dinosaur that as it grows, it undergoes physical changes? Well, that's not too difficult to grasp at, because life, we look around us, that's how it is. Babies, when they're born, they have different features than fully grown adults. Babies when they're born, they have usually bigger eye sockets, and they just have that cute face. No matter if they're human babies or other animals, they have a certain characteristic to them, and as we grow, different things change. So we begin to look at this and say, wait a minute, maybe we're not talking about three different species, maybe we're talking about one species, and they're actually just different stages of growth. We have a young dinosaur, a more middle mature dinosaur, and maybe an older dinosaur as they're going along. Now this is important, I'm going to tell you why here in a little bit. But then we began to look at other dinosaurs, in fact, the Triceratops. They began to examine Triceratops skulls, and for the first time they actually found a baby Triceratops skull. It was amazing. So they found this little baby, and they look at it, and this baby, you can identify it as a Triceratops, but it doesn't look like a miniature version of a full-grown Triceratops, does it? No, its horns are shorter, even proportionally shorter, and the proportions are different. So scientists for many years thought, well, babies are just basically miniature versions of adults. Well, we don't see that in nature currently, so it doesn't make sense to think that way. But the consensus was the baby Triceratops would look just like this, but a lot smaller. Jack Horner and his team began to say, wait a minute, we're finding baby Triceratops. You can identify it as a Triceratops, however, its features are different. And so they began to look and identify, and so what he put together was a chart of growth stages, going from babies, youngsters, all up to a full adult. And he looked at it and said, look, if you look at the horns, how they're kind of curved back, and then eventually they start curving forward until they're kind of pretty much fully forward pointing. So he needed evidence for this, so they actually began to cross-section some of these dinosaurs, these Triceratops horns. He began to take cross-sections and look, and in there, it's almost kind of like a tree ring, and you can see the bone deposits, and he began to look, as they progress older, that on one side of the horn, there is an erosion of bone, of hard bony material, and on the other side, there's a deposition, a deposit of this hard bony material. What that will do is it will cause a horn to move forward. as one side is weaker and the other side puts more strength to it, it moves forward. Now this bony material probably isn't like our bones, like, you know, solid bones. It's probably more like a keratin, almost like a rhinoceros bone, or like different birds' beaks. They can shape, they can reform themselves depending on what it's made out of. And begin to look at this with Triceratops and say, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at different stages in growth. Now, with the Triceratops, there are many different species of Triceratops. And he began to say, wait a minute, what if what we're looking at is not multiple species, but variation of species, or variation within sex or age as they go along? So instead of multiple different species, maybe we're looking at a single Triceratops family. So this was interesting. This is groundbreaking. I'm watching this show and I'm saying, yeah, this makes sense. This works, and I'm going to use this. He also looks at the T-Rex. Now, the T-Rex, you know, is the granddaddy of dinosaurs. Everyone loves T-Rex. The T-Rex, we know that there are lots of different similar dinosaurs to the T-Rex in the fossil record. One of them is called the Nanotyrannus, and it looks a lot like the T-Rex, but smaller and has a little bit narrower snout, but it looks very much like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so people would say, well, the Nanotyrannus is a primitive ancestor of the T-Rex. Well, he began to look at this and reevaluate things and look at these facial structures and these features and say, no. It's smaller than T-Rex. Yeah, it's not because it evolved from a little small dinosaur to a great big massive dinosaur. It's because it was a young T-Rex. So he began to say, what we're looking at truly is baby T-Rex versus adult T-Rex. The life changes that go on throughout their life make a lot of sense because we see that currently around the world. Why wouldn't it be the same and be very true for dinosaurs? So because of that, Jack Horner says, and he's a well-known paleontologist, he says now that we should have a reduction by about 1/3 of all known dinosaur species. Now, obviously, if you're the guy who named this dinosaur, you're not going to like that very well because there goes your discovery out the window. It's already been discovered. And so, of course, he's getting a lot of flack for it. He's getting a lot of feedback, and people don't like it very much. However, looking at the evidence, it really, really lines up saying, hey, this looks like it's the actual case. Here's the ending of that video. I want you to see this little segment right here.
Whether it's the maximum size of a T-Rex, we don't know. And it's certainly possible that they get substantially bigger.
If Horner's right, as they grew older and bigger, their faces grew even gnarlier. Their skull features never stopped changing. In retrospect, it makes sense. Why wouldn't we think dinosaurs look different at different ages? We never recognized it because no one ever suspected that their looks could change so dramatically. Horner suspects that ultimately we may reduce the number of species worldwide by as much as 1/3.
Once we actually start analyzing them in this way, I think we're going to find there are many dinosaur species that will be sunk.
In their place, we're gaining a new understanding of dinosaur lives. Like us, dinosaurs passed through many different stages of life. And from birth to death, each was unique.
All right. Now that's just the very ending of that video, Dinosaurs Decoded. And you might be able to find it on there. I think it's also on YouTube if you looked on there. Now, the question is, why in the world does this matter? What difference does it make whether we have lots of different dinosaur species or we have very few dinosaur species that may have been, different life stages or different variations? Why does this really matter in what we're talking about? And it matters because, remember, dinosaurs are used as that poster child of evolution. And they teach that these dinosaurs evolved differently. They teach that maybe this Nanotyrannus was a primitive ancestor and evolved slowly over millions of years into the full-size T-Rex. Well, Jack Horner, evolutionist, what he's done is he's kind of thrown out that whole teaching right out the window and saying, maybe what we're looking at isn't necessarily as big as we thought. Maybe the evidence of millions of years and evolution really, truly isn't there. And so, why do we have the differences that we do see? We see variations of dinosaurs. We see different types, different features. Why do we have differences? Well, first of all, it could be these growth stages. this is what Jack Horner in this video is talking about. Different stages of growth and development in these dinosaurs show that they have different features, different characteristics. They would look different. Also, variation of the sexes. Males and females, today in lots of animals, they look different. There's a difference between males and females. Also, speciation and diversity. We look around the world today, we have a lot of diversity in the animal kingdom. Now, that doesn't mean that they evolved that way over millions of years, but there is diversity in the animal kingdom. So let me ask you guys a question, okay? Do animals change? Do animals change? Be brave. All right, so you're like, I don't know, is this a trick question? Do animals change? Yeah, they change. But we're going to look at how they change and how they don't change. Yeah, animals change. Dogs change, right? What do dogs change into? Dogs. Dogs change into different dogs. Do dogs change into cats? Do dogs change into fish? Do fish change into dogs? No. Dogs change into dogs. Now, if we look at it, the evolutionary concept would teach that microbes eventually become men, right? Microbes can evolve to become higher life forms. But if you look at it in creation, yeah, animals change, but what they do is they change horizontally. They change in a way that they still are animals. Men are men, dogs are dogs, birds are birds, lizards are lizards, frogs are frogs. Fish are fish, and microbes are microbes. They change, they have different features, and there's an incredible amount of genetic diversity within animal life, and so that allows for variation, for changes within a certain kind or a certain type. Now, we have different things like the dog kind, for example, and the Bible tells us that the dogs are dogs, cats are cats. If you look at it, what the Bible teaches, it teaches actually that, especially in Genesis, 10 times it says, let these animals reproduce after their kind, or after its kind. When God creates life, it says, let it reproduce after its kind. So we have different kinds of animals, different family types of animals. For example, like the dog kind. The dog would contain, the coyote, the wolf, the dingo, the collie, the chihuahua. I don't know if they're dogs. Sewer rats. Sorry. Chihuahua lovers, anybody? One in the back. Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't like chihuahuas. I'm still not sure about that one. However, dogs are dogs, right? Now, there's variation in dogs. There's modification in dogs. And if we look at genetics, we have a tool today that Darwin never had. We have a tool today in understanding genetics that Darwin only dreamed about. And Darwin puzzled about. And Darwin couldn't figure out. And Darwin's best leading theories about gemmules and all these crazy things turned out to be not true. I mean, at one point he thought, well, the giraffe has a really long neck because he was reaching for the plants. And so he stretched his neck out so far, and then eventually when he had his own giraffe baby, his giraffe baby had a longer neck. And he thought for a long time, if you were a man that liked to work out and become physically strong, that you could physically pass on that trait to your children, that your children would become strong because of the things that happened in your life. He talked about these gemmules and these things that passed on. Darwin only dreamed about what we have today with genetics. And in genetics, we can understand what variation and speciation really, truly is. For example, if you look up here on the chart, you've got two dogs up here that have the genetic information for medium length fur. We have some long hair and some short hair. Now, if these dogs had children, had puppies, and they would have some maybe with only short fur, some with medium fur, and some with long fur. Now, what they've done is they've passed on their genetic information. Just like we have diversity in our own children, they pass on their information. Now, if you have children and maybe you have brown eyes and your husband or wife have blue eyes, your children, when they are born, they might have brown or blue eyes. However, we know from genetics that brown is a dominant color. So statistically, you'll probably have more brown-eyed children than blue-eyed children. Same sort of thing happens with all sorts of characteristics. For example, like these dogs here, you can have a dog that has the genetic information for only short hair. Some for medium hair, some for long fur. Now, if you have the genetic information for only long fur, and say this dog right here marries this dog right here, and they have little dog babies, then what are you going to pass on to the future generation? Only information that contains long fur. So future generations of that line are only going to have long fur, unless the genetic information for short or medium fur is reintroduced back into the line. And so you can get an enormous amount of variation, of speciation, of change, of variety and diversity through that. Now that's only one characteristic. There's hair color, there's leg length, eye length, there's all sorts of things. In fact, looking at dogs, most of the dog breeds we have today, they've arisen only since about the 1600s. We've really done a lot of intervention for creating breeds how we want them. You take the smallest of one litter and you take the smallest of another litter and you breed them together and you come out with really pretty small puppies, and then you continue till you get huge Great Danes and you get little, ugly Chihuahuas. You can selectively breed these animals for the characteristics that you want. Hunting dogs, toy poodles that, walk around in Hollywood in people's bags for some reason. All these things. If you ever watch the dog shows like the Yukonuba or the AKC, you can see this variety and this diversity. Most of the animals you see there are not naturally selected. They're actually selected by people, bred for these certain characteristics. One of the problems with that is when you breed for the certain characteristics, you usually stay close within these families, and what you end up having are dogs with genetic diseases and problems. And a mutt is much more healthy. You typically have a longer life and less problems than a purebred dog of another kind, because these purebred dogs, they share and they combine this genetic information for diseases. Same thing happens why we're not supposed to marry close relations today, because the genetic problems and defects that you have are easily passed on to future generations when you combine them with somebody who also shares the same things, a brother, a sister, somebody within your family. But looking at the dog kind, we have lots of different diversities. In fact, looking at genetics, we've been able to show that all modern dogs go back to an ancestral wolf-like dog. They all share the same markers. They all go back to one animal. Oh, okay, makes a lot of sense. You can jump on and look at studies of human population and spreads, and looking at that, they've gone back and shown that we all come from the same primordial Eve, and they've looked at these different family groups, and they've shown some amazing things. If you look around the room, you see posters of kind of the ancient civilizations. In fact, we're in the middle of a study that I'm teaching to our students on ancient civilizations in the Bible. And the first week we talked about the spread and the diversity from the Tower of Babel, and looking at modern day science and genetics that show that we come from the same ancestors. It's exciting stuff. The Bible said it first, and then guess what science is coming along and doing? Backing up the Bible. Awesome. It's a great time to live. Genetics, all the stuff we're seeing is an amazing thing. So we have different dog kinds. We also have different dinosaur kinds. Now these are an example of the ceratopsians, the triceratops, if you will, the family that kind of belongs to it. Lots of different variations, and some of these, like Jack Horner's talking about, could simply be the younger versions of their adults. Some of them could be males versus females that we found. We really can't tell. They've only recently had a solution to figure out males versus females. They think, so far, it has to do with egg-laying calcium deposits that they find. But they're not even sure of male versus female in the dinosaur kingdom. And a lot of this may simply be variety, diversity. Not necessarily evolutionary progression, but variety. I mean, a house cat lives the same time as a tiger. Variety, diversity. If you were to, for example, if you were to go and find the skeletal remains of a baby, a teenager, and a fully grown adult, you could come up with two different solutions to this. You could look at this and say, we found the primitive ancestor. Look at this one that's smaller, has different features, eye sockets are bigger. It's not quite fully formed to the capability of this fully grown large one. So this must be an ancestral, primordial ancestor in the missing link. This must be, some kind of transitional form. And here in the middle, you see this transitional species. This is the transition between this creature right here and this fully grown creature right here. You could do that. They could do that. They do that. You could make that assumption. You could look at it and say, well, this is a transitional form, or this is the primitive ancestor, and millions of years later, you can see the evolutionary progression from the small to great and fully formed. Again, is that the case? No. What you'd be looking at is a family that may have died and been buried somehow, and now you're discovering them, a baby, a teenager, and a fully grown adult. Same time, could even be the same family. Nothing to do with evolution, but you see how easy it is to kind of twist that? You see how easy it is to kind of make that assumption? If you go into the situation with an evolutionary assumption, looking at it with evolutionary glasses, you're going to assume evolution is true. You're going to assume evolution in everything that you see. So even when you see a situation as simple as this, you're going to look at it and say, evolution, evolution, evolution. It may not be the case. Same thing with these dinosaurs here. Same thing that we see. So why does it matter? What is this whole dinosaurs and less species, what is it really talking about? Well, it all goes back to one event that the Bible records for us. That is the flood of Noah. The Bible says that all animals were created within these 6 days. All life on this planet was created within 6 days. The Bible tells us that all land animals were created on day 6, along with man, okay? Now, are dinosaurs land animals? Yeah. So according to what the Bible itself teaches, when were dinosaurs created? Day 6, 24-hour young day of creation. Now, looking at this, how did the dinosaurs die out? Well, I believe the dinosaurs died out like most other life on our planet. Most all of them died out during this flood of Noah that scientists disregard, that they don't want to think about. However, I do believe that some were saved and put on board this ark. Why? Because I'm going to go back to the Bible and see what it says. It says, 2 by 2 they came to the boat, representing every living thing that breathes. Would that include dinosaurs? Yeah. A male and female of each kind. Remember that? Kind. Dog kind. Cat kind. Okay, we're not talking dingoes and coyotes and wolves and all these things. We're talking about kinds. A representative. A male and female of each kind entered just as God had commanded Noah. And then the Lord closed the door behind them. So he's looking for representatives of these kinds. Representatives that can contain information, that can spread out, can provide us with all these various species we have today. Genetic diversity is incredible, and it's packed into you and to me and to all the animals, all the life on our planet. That's why we don't make exact clone replicas of ourselves when we have children. We have so much diversity. Even when you have children with your husband or your wife, your children don't look exactly the same, because there's diversity even within you. So they're looking for a representative from each family kind, and so God only needed 2 of every kind of animal on the ark, a representative of each family type. In other words, he didn't need every cheetah and bobcat and cougar and panther and lion. He didn't need 2 of all those animals. He needed 2 felines, 2 cats on board the ark. Same thing with the dinosaurs. Just look at it over there. A type of dinosaur. So unlike all the ceratopsian varieties that we see, we're looking at 2 ceratopsians. Could be the triceratops. It could be another variety. But he needs 2 representatives of this. Now looking at what Jack Horner was talking about in this movie, he's saying we're looking at a reduction of the known species of dinosaurs. He's saying that this poster child of evolution may not be exactly what we're saying. And B, we don't have as many varieties of dinosaurs. We don't need as many dinosaurs. And if I'm looking at it from the biblical perspective, guess what that tells me? We may not need as many varieties of dinosaurs on board the ark. So it makes Noah's job a little bit easier. In fact, looking at the different types of dinosaurs, there's only about 50 different kinds of dinosaurs. Interesting. So Noah, when God commanded him to take a representative from each kind, of each type, he would have brought on about 100, 2 of each kind, 100 dinosaurs on board the ark. And I believe it was on there. Why? Because that's what the Bible teaches. So boarding on this ark, huge ark. We're not going to go into a study about the ark tonight. We've done that before, but huge, 450 feet long, at least, and that's not even talking about the royal cubit, which could be even further than that, but at least 450 feet long, 75 feet tall, and 45 feet tall and 75 feet wide. Huge, huge boat. And the studies and the statistics of this show us that there's plenty of room on board the ark for every family type, for a representative of each of these these family types. And not only that, but we do know that dinosaurs got to be really, really big. But guess what? They started out really, really small. Exactly. In fact, they started out really small in eggs. And there's a thing about eggs that eggs can only be a certain size and they cannot get any bigger because an eggshell can only be so thick. Because eggshells, if you look at like a chicken egg, it has these little holes in there. All these little holes around it. Do you guys know what that is? It's actual holes in the eggshell. They go all the way through there. You know what those holes are for? For letting air into there and for letting gases expel out of there. Now, they're so small that they're waterproof. You can put an egg of a chicken, while the chicken's growing, you can put it underwater and the chicken won't drown. However, air and gases can be exchanged so that it keeps the animal alive. However, if you were to lay a giant room-sized dinosaur egg, the shell of that egg would have to be so thick that it would not allow for the oxygen or for those gases to transpire through there. You have to have there's only a ratio of thickness for an eggshell for it to be able to hold up its own weight, as well as be able to allow for these gases to exchange in and out of this egg. So eggshells of dinosaurs only would have gotten so big. They could not possibly be huge. So that means that all dinosaurs that come out of these eggshells started off fairly small. Now, looking at the animals that Noah would have taken aboard the ark, what was the purpose for taking all these animals on board the ark? To save them so they could reproduce when they got off. Now, we know that dinosaurs continue to grow as reptiles. Lizards or reptiles, they never stop growing. Did you know that? Unlike humans, we stop growing, but they never stop growing. They eventually die, but they continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, Noah went out looking or waited for this huge dinosaurs to come lumbering along. First of all, they're probably beyond their reproductive age. He's looking for younger ones that are able to reproduce. So he probably would have had smaller dinosaurs on board the ark, maybe 100 smaller dinosaurs. Now we have really, really big dinosaurs, and we see like a T-Rex. We also have some small dinosaurs. In fact, the average size for a dinosaur is probably around the size of a sheep, maybe up to a horse. Okay, so we're talking, Noah's putting 100 horses on the ark. And that's for the dinosaurs. Not too bad. They've actually looked at studies and said, you know what, even with all the different family types, all the representatives, looking what the Bible actually teaches, that the ark would only have been maybe half full. Plenty of room for people that Noah was preaching to. A preacher of righteousness was speaking these words, saying, come get on board this ark. God prepared a way. He had the way prepared. They didn't take it, though. But there was plenty of room for all the animals, all the food. Again, we've done studies, and there's great things. I'm not going to get into that tonight. If you want to ask me about that, we can talk about that later. But all the room needed on this ark for all the animals that we have today, as well as a lot of animals we don't have today, like the dodo. Other animals that maybe have gone extinct over time. Lots of species have gone extinct. Dinosaurs, from what the Bible teaches, would have been no different. Created on that day 6, would have been there during this time of the flood, would have been on the ark with Noah. There's no guarantee that all animals that got on board the ark, all of their descendants would have survived. There's no guarantee of that. However, I do believe, yes, they were on board the ark. And that's why we're talking about tonight, Jurassic Ark, or Dinosaur Discoveries that back up the Bible. So first one, don't forget, mass kill sites, all right? Great scientific evidence that you heard it from the Natural History Museum. These dinosaurs died in a catastrophe and were swept away, buried, and died in a flood. Interesting. Second thing, unfossilized bones. Great discoveries that say, man, these bones cannot be 65 plus million years old. Something else has to be the case. And third, these dinosaur kinds, a reduction in dinosaur species, that we have only a certain set amount, maybe 50 different dinosaur kinds that actually help confirm and back up what the Bible teaches.